Hello, students. I hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to the live streaming of the daily news analysis. And today we'll be understanding the important news articles of 9th August 2022. Now, students, this is a reiteration. Now, you cannot think of cracking the CLAT exam or any other government exam without the preparation of current affairs. So, therefore, current affairs, newspaper reading, there is no shortcut for that. And we at ClatPrep make your task easier by actually giving you the summary of the daily newspaper. So, therefore, you cannot think of entering into the top law school without actually building the habit of reading newspapers on daily basis. So on that note, let us begin with the important analysis of the important articles of 9th August 2022. Well, this is your educator Prithvi Raj Singh, and we break the stories live daily from the ClatPrep office. Well, now on the very front page of the Hindu, there was an article about the closing ceremony of Commonwealth Games 2022. And they were, as we all know, they were held in England at Birmingham in England. And India has finished fourth in the medal tally. Right, so it's a remarkable achievement, and India has won in total 61 medals. Correct, and out of 61, 22 were gold, 16 were silver, and 23 were bronze. Right. So in this sense, India finished fourth in the medal tally. We also elaborate over the same in the coming few slides. Well, in the final day, India won six medals, including four gold, one silver, and one bronze. Correct. So PV Sandhu, Lakshya Sen won the single titles. Chirag Shetty, Satvik Sairaj, Ranik Reddy, took the gold medal in men's doubles. So this is there. Now the next Commonwealth Games will be held in the year 2026. So in this sense, Commonwealth Games are being held every 4 years, and it is event where all the Commonwealth countries are those countries which were former British colonies. They participate, including India, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, England itself. Right. So the next Commonwealth Games will be held in Victoria in Australia in the year 2026. Now, moving to some of the factual details about the Commonwealth Games. Well, this is the emblem, as you can see on the screen. I'll make it as simple and as lucid as possible. So 2022 Commonwealth Games, this is the emblem, and it was being held in Birmingham, England. And they started on 28th July and they culminated yesterday, that is 8th August 2022. Now, the motto for the Commonwealth Games 2022 is sport is the beginning of all. And it in fact summarizes the importance or the role played by sport in uniting one and all. So sport is the beginning of all. So this is the motto which has to be kept in the mind, very important for the examination. Now, as far as the official musket, for its marketing and branding goes, it is a bull, named Perry. So as you can see on the screen, Perry, a multicolored bull named Perry, is the official mascot for Birmingham 2022, and it is named after the bull, which is there found majorly in Perry Bar, which is within the Perry Park, and it is close to the Alexander Stadium where the Birmingham 2022 were being held, right? And very importantly, this official musket was being designed by a 10-year-old girl named Emma Lowe from Bolton. Very important. The musket was being designed by a 10-year-old girl, Emma Lowe, right? So Perry is the official musket for Birmingham 2022. Again, a very important takeaway. Now, as far as the cricket is concerned, for the first time, women's T20 international cricket was included, in the Commonwealth Games. Uh, in fact, there are some other sports also which were formally included for the first time, like beach volleyball and para table tennis. right? So they have been included in the games for the first time. Well, as far as the Indian women T20 international cricket team at its performance in the Commonwealth Games is concerned, very important. India was able to make it to the final. However, it lost with a very thin margin, against Australia, defending Australia. So India just lost to Australia in the final match by 9 runs, and therefore it was seeded silver medal. Right. So very important. The first thing is that the cricket is being included. Women's T20 cricket is being included for the first time in Commonwealth Games. Second, that India did make it to the final, but lost to Australia. Just it won silver medal. So these are some important takeaways. I hope it is clear. Now, this is the final tally, students, for the Commonwealth Games on the screen. Now, here you can clearly see that India has finished fourth in the overall ranking, and the ranking is based on the number of gold medals, right? So, India was able to win 22 gold medals, 16 silver, and 23 bronze. In all, Indian contingent won 61 medals, right? Very important, 61 medals. So 22 gold. And the medal tally was being topped by Australia, which won 178 medals with 67 gold. The second was England. Third was Canada. So we were just behind Canada, by 4 gold medals. So if we would have crossed 26 or would have won more 4 5 more medals, we would have been top three performers in the Commonwealth Games. Although albeit India won, finished at the fourth spot. Very important factual information with total 61 medals and 22 golds. I hope it is clear. Now, India at 2018 Commonwealth Games. Now we must understand that in 2018, Commonwealth Games were held at Brisbane, Australia, and there India, finished third for the tournament, and with winning 66 medals and 26 golds, right? So in this sense, you can see that here, this time 2022, we have won 61 medals. In the last Commonwealth Games, we won 66 medals, right? So in this sense, 2018 Commonwealth Games, Brisbane, Australia, India finished third for the tournament, correct? And this Australian Commonwealth Games can be considered as India's best position since 2010 Commonwealth Games, which they hosted. In fact, in Delhi, it was Delhi Commonwealth Games, and their Indian contingent won 38 gold medals and a total of 101 medals. Right? So here you can see in 2010, India won 101 medals, and it was hosted by India in Delhi. In 2018, we won 66 medals, finishing third for the tournament. And so 2010 Commonwealth Games performance was the best for India. Then 2018 was the second best, where India finished third, and 2022 was its third best performance with winning 61 medals. However, 2018 we fared well, right? So I hope we are clear with this comparison. Moving to the next news article, and I'm trying to make it as simple and as easy as possible. Now, India at 2022 Commonwealth Games. Well, the flag bearing at the opening ceremony, the flag bearers were hockey player Manpreet Singh and badminton athlete PV Sandhu. And the flag bearers for the closing ceremony were Nikhat Zareen, the boxer, and Sharath Achanta. So Sharath Achanta, you all know table tennis, and Nikhat Zareen is boxing. Well, squash player Anahat Singh became youngest Indian athlete to compete at the Commonwealth Games at just 14 years in age. So Anahat Singh became the youngest Indian athlete to compete in the Commonwealth Games. He was just 14 years of age, and he's a squash player. Well, the 45-year-old lawn bowls player Sunil Bahadur was the oldest player in the contingent. So this is also an important fact. Where India's first medal of the game was won by Saket Sargar with a silver in weightlifting. Very important. the first medal. Now, if the question comes, who among the following won the first medal in Commonwealth Games 2022 from India? So it was Sanket Sargar, and the medal was silver, and the sport was weightlifting. As far as the first gold medal for Commonwealth 2022 from India is concerned, it was Saikhom Mirabai Shanu. I repeat, Saikhom Mirabai Shanu won the first gold medal for the country, and in the weightlifting sport event at Commonwealth 2022. Well, India won its first ever medal in lawn bowls. So, in our earlier video, we have discussed, and in fact, I will also include the video for lawn bowls after women's fours team, won gold medal, and also men's fours won silver medal. So, India won its first ever medal in lawn bowls, women gold, and men's silver. Well, Sharat Kamal, table tennis player, who was also the flag bearer for the closing ceremony, accompanying Nikhat Zareen, won three gold and one silver medal. And mind you, he was 40 years in age and still uh, swinging and playing, getting medals for the country. Well, this is the final medal tally, students, because the Commonwealth Games is now just over yesterday. 8th August was the last date, and with 22 medals, India finished fourth position in the medal tally. So here I've included the list of all the gold medalists. So Saikho Mirabai Shanu, the first gold medal won by a Indian in the Commonwealth Games 2022 in weightlifting. Then Jeremy Lalri Nunga, weightlifting again. Achinta Shioli, weightlifting. Then lawn bowls, women's fours. So it was a teamwork of Rupa Rani, Lovely Chaube, Anan Moni Saikia, and Pinky Singh. And again, in table tennis men's team, it was Harmeet Desai and team. In powerlifting, it was Sudhir, Bajrang Punia wrestling, Sakshi Malik wrestling, Deepak Punia is again wrestling, Ravi Kumar Daya wrestling, Finish Hogarth is wrestling, Naveen Malik is wrestling. As Bhavina Patel for table tennis, Neetu Gangas for boxing, Amit Panghal for boxing, Eldhos Paul for athletics, Nikha Zareen boxing. She was also the flag bearer for the closing ceremony we just discussed, including accompanying Sharat Achanta. Table tennis, PV Sandhu badminton, Lakshya Sen badminton, men's single, Chairag Shetty and Satvik Sairaj Ranik Reddy, men's doubles, badminton, and Sharat Achanta again table tennis, men's single. Right. So here you can see in mixed doubles also Sharat Achanta won gold in table tennis, and singles also Sharat Achanta was able to win the gold medal at 2022 Commonwealth Games. So an important information, and I expect a question on this. I hope it is clear. So we are done with the Commonwealth Games and very important for the examination. Going to the next news article on the screen. Well, students, recently a Chinese vessel named Yuan Wang 5, which was abound to Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, was being stopped by by Sri Lanka, uh, and and in fact, Sri Lankan government requested China to delay the visit of a tracking vessel that was due to arrive on August 11 after India objected its arrival at the Sri Lankan port named Hambantota. Now, against this, China has objected, and in fact, China is saying that it is a scientific exploration activity within their jurisdictional waters, right? And there is a strong cooperation between China and Sri Lanka is independent in choosing uh, its partners, and in fact they chose China, and so therefore there must be no interference by any third nation like India, right? So this is the the news article, and so we are here. The takeaways are the Hambantota port, Sri Lanka, where Chinese there is huge Chinese investment. At the same time, Yuan Wang 5, the Chinese vessel, correct. Now, China has clearly said that do not disturb the normal affairs with Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is firmly committed to one China policy. Students, they may ask a question on one China policy. Well, one China policy is related to Taiwan issue. In One China policy, China considers Taiwan as its residuary province or as its renegade province, and it believes that any country, if it enters into the diplomatic relation with Taiwan, then China would cut off all the diplomatic ties with that particular country. I repeat, if any country, any foreign country enters into diplomatic, agreement or relation with Taiwan, then China would cut all the diplomatic ties with that country. So this is called as One China policy. That means it do not want the countries to recognize Taiwan, you know, uh, as a separate nation. In fact, China believes it to be its own territory, its own part. Taiwan technically is called as Republic of China, whereas China is called as People's Republic of China, right? So this is something which we also discussed during our Taiwan's crisis session. So the ship's visit is another example of Indian and Chinese interests rubbing up against each other in Sri Lanka. We all know that recently India raised concerns about the awarding of a renewable energy project to a company from China for installing energy systems in three islands of Jaffna. Right? So an important article. Moving to the next news article. Well, recently a panel is being set up in the parliament, and it is batting for equality in child's guardianship. Now, students, we must understand that we have an act called as Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, also called as HMGA 1956. Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act 1956. Now, it actually, gives the guardianship rights to the parents of the children. But the sad part of this act is that it do not recognize mother as the guardian of minor legitimate child unless the father is deceased or is found unfit. I repeat, Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act 1956 do not recognize mother as the guardian of the minor legitimate child unless the father dies or is being found unfit. So therefore, the panel has said that this act is unjustified, it is unfair and unreasonable because it violates Article 14, which is right to equality. At the same time, it also violates Article 15, which is prohibition of discrimination on the grounds only of race, religion, caste, sex, and place of origin. So therefore, if the guardianship rights is not being given to the mother of the minor child, then you're violating Article 14 as well as 15, right? As it is being found by the panel in the parliament. Therefore, the panel has said that there is an urgent need to amend the HMGA and accord equal treatment to both mother and father as natural guardians. So, therefore, a report is being sent called as a review of guardianship and adoption laws, where Section 6 of the HMGA lays down that in the case of a Hindu minor boy and a Hindu minor unmarried girl, the father is the natural guardian, and after him, the mother. Right? So the natural guardian is father and not the mother. Only if father dies or is unfit, then only mother would be called as the natural guardian. Now, Section 7 of the same Act provides that the natural guardianship of an adopted son who is a minor passes on adoption to the adopted father and after him to the adoptive mother, right? So even for the adopted son, the guardianship belongs to the adopted father, and only when the adopted father dies or is unfit, then only it would pass over to the adoptive mother. So, in this sense, HMG 1956 is unjustified, it is unequal, and it discriminates women or the mother. So, I hope it is clear. And again, continuing the article. So, in this sense, the panel relooks, at child custody in case of marital disputes. Uh, and they also calls for awarding joint custody, in fact. for the welfare of the child. The basis for ending marriage today has shifted from fault finding divorce to mutual consent divorce. So these days, we are seeing many cases of mutual consent divorce, and therefore the custodial arrangement has to be worked upon, which works the best for the children. Now, the panel also proposed the guardianship rights of those differently abled and suffering from autism or cerebral palsy, palsy, people suffering from mental health problems, as well as senior citizens. So, in this sense, it also talks about the guardianship of majors, and it, in fact, believes to consider supported decision making as an alternative to guardianship, where a person appoints trusted advisors, such as friends, family, or professionals, to serve as supporters. So moving to the next news article on the screen. Well, students, recently we know that an ordinance was being passed uh, by the Kerala uh, government seeking to dilute the powers of Lokayukta. Now, this ordinance actually, changed the text of the Lokayukta, Lokayukta, saying that from now onwards, any decision of the Kerala Lokayukta, before it makes any decision, it has to consult with the executive or the government or the state government. So it actually, kills the very purpose of a impartial ombudsman. Correct. Because when you are before you arrive at a decision, you're taking concurrence from the executive, then there is no point of having an ombudsman like anti-corruption ombudsman like Lokayukta, right? So but then it was being passed without the legislative approval through ordinance. Now definitely you know that ordinance under article 123 at the center is being uh, is being is being is being proposed by the parliament, and then it is being signed by the president, and the same goes for the state government, right? But then it has a time limit of 6 months, and 1 month, 1.5 months after the reassembly of the house. So in all it has 6 plus 1.5, that is 7.5 months lifetime. Correct. Now, this ordinance was being again proposed by the Kerala government to the governor, to actually, get it signed. And therefore, this has become very controversial. And in fact, the governor of Kerala, Arif Muhammad Khan, has clearly said that it is subversion of the legislative process, because the lawmaking function is the exclusive domain of the legislature. And if the government bypasses legislature and passes any ordinances, then it kills the system of check and balances in the state. So therefore, the controversial Kerala Lokayukta 1999 amendment ordinance, and in fact at the same time they also proposed Kerala Cooperative Societies Act 2022 through amendment ordinance. Now, Mr. Khan, who is the governor, has said that it is a Machiavellian bid by the government to defang the ombudsman to forestall anti-corruption inquiries. And in fact, it said that it is the LDF government ploy to undermine the democratic functioning of cooperative societies. I'm talking about the Kerala Cooperative Societies Act 2022. So it is an ploy to undermine the democratic functioning of cooperative societies with an eye on controlling Milma, right? So with this ordinance, the Kerala Cooperative Society would be controlled, and which is called as Milma. So therefore, the governor has said that the state government should elaborate the reason on or the rationale. Supreme Court in 2017 have said that the re-promulgation of the ordinance, without actually getting it passed from the legislature, amounts to subversion of the democratic legislative process. It is unconstitutional, and the government contemplated an executive order to curb the Recently, we know that there was a widespread speculation that the Kerala government is contemplating an executive order to curb governor's power as chancellor. Now, governor acts as a chancellor of the state universities, but it is an extra constitutional power. It is not mentioned in the constitution, right? And therefore, when you would rip away governor from the power of chancellor, then he would not have any role in selecting the university vice chancellors. So therefore, this is in the news. I hope it is clear. Going to the next news article. Recently, the Supreme Court has said that the minority groups identified in the states are the exclusive domain of the state governments and not, I mean, it is based on the state, their numbers in the state and not the numbers in the district, right? Are you getting my point? Because you cannot determine the minority groups based on their numbers in their district. It is to be ascertained only based on their numbers in the state concerned, right? So therefore, Supreme Court has observed that it is contrary to law to identify religious and linguistic minorities. That means language-based minorities or the religious minority communities district-wise, right? So you cannot ascertain their number district-wise and try declaring them as minority in any particular district, because the minority status of the linguistic and religious communities have to be considered state-wise. That means it should be done at the state level. And in fact, even in the 11 judge constitutional bench of under TMA 5 versus State of Karnataka 2002, the bench said that the court cannot pass general directions to the states to bestow certain communities with minority status, right? So if you bring a concrete case, we can look into it. So actually, the petitioner was saying was you know petition that the followers of Judaism, Bahaism, Hinduism, who were the real minorities in Ladakh, Mizoram, Lakshadweep, Kashmir, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Arunachal, Punjab, Manipur, could not establish and administer educational institutions of their choice, thus jeopardizing their fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 29 and 30. So 29 and 30 are cultural and educational rights. So the right to administer and run the educational institutions are being given under 2930 to the minority communities. So this is all about this article. Going to the next news article. Well, recently, a bill to set up carbon markets is being passed in Lok Sabha, and it mandates the use of non-fossil sources. Well, carbon markets are the markets where the carbon credits are being traded. For example, let's say you are running a factory, and by going with some green measures or energy conservation measures, you are able to save energy, and thereby you are able to cut the emissions. Then you would earn the carbon credits, and these carbon credits can be traded into the international market for money. You getting? So if you are going for the green measures like building plants, trees, greenery, you are developing instruments to cut the energy or to preserve the energy, to preserve and to cut the greenhouse gas emission, then you would earn carbon credits, and those carbon credits can be traded in the market. So this bill is being passed in the Lok Sabha to set up the carbon markets, right? And this is called as Energy Conservation Amendment Bill 2022. Very important, and this was very much talked about. Energy Conservation Amendment Bill 2022, which provides for the establishment of carbon credit markets, and brings large residential buildings under the energy conservation regime. Right. So that means the large residential buildings would also come under the energy conservation regime. But the bill mandates the use of non-fossil sources, including green hydrogen, green ammonia, biomass, and ethanol. Because students, we know that at the Conference of Parties 26, COP 26, Glasgow, Scotland, Prime Minister Modi and the government of India made it very clear that the renewable energy target is 500 gigawatts to be achieved by the year 2030. And the net zero emission target is set up to 2070, year 2070, right? So in fact, the Minister of Energy is Kising is saying that we are going on the right direction. And so this bill, which is the Energy Conservation Amendment Bill 2022, has amended the Energy Conservation Act 2001 to establish carbon markets, enhance the scope of energy conservation building code, and amend penalty provisions and increase number of members in the governing council of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Right. So all the big buildings, residential buildings, would have now energy conservation building code. Now, the carbon credit would not be exported. So this is very important. From now onwards, the carbon credit won't be exported and would have to be used domestically. Right. So whatever carbon credit that a firm earns has to be sold in the local market and not to be exported. Till India meets the commitment it's set up at Conference of Party 21, that is Paris Conference, and COP26, that is Glasgow Conference. It would not allow the export of credits. Getting my point? So the states and not, in fact, the opposition member from Congress, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, said that the states and not just the central agencies should also be allowed to issue certificates of carbon credit in the spirit of federalism, right? And in fact, what the government's policy regarding, so in fact, many members in the parliament also said that what is the government's policy regarding coal versus renewable sources is, because at one hand you are talking about cutting down, increasing the use of non-fossil sources. On the other hand, there is a order being passed to increase the coal resources to meet the growing energy requirements. Right. So this is all about this bill. Very important. Moving to the next news article. Well, the United States Upper House, Senate, has adopted a bill for climate and health, and this is called as Inflation Reduction Act. So the bill, is officially called as Inflation Reduction Bill, and after it is being passed, it would be called as Inflation Reduction Act. Now it has been passed in the upper house of the American Congress, that is U.S. Senate, and this bill vows to give $430 billion, for the energy conservation. So it is Joe Biden's ambitious climate tax and healthcare plan, right? Before the office goes for the crucial midterm elections. Now, in the voting, there was a tie-breaking vote or casting vote by the Vice President Kamala Harris. And in fact, according to this bill, uh, you know, it would actually incur the biggest American investment ever on climate, that is $370 billion, aimed at aimed at effecting a 40% drop in greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030. Right. So the American government is very clear that they want to cut the greenhouse emission by 40% by 2030 in order to achieve the green energy targets, and they would be spending $370 billion, on the climate change. Now, restoring, and this way, America would restore its leadership in meeting the global climate challenge. Now, the bill would provide Americans with a tax credit of up to $7,500 when purchasing an electric car. So, if you are purchasing an electric car, you would be given a tax credit, in fact, of $7,500. Plus, you will also be given a 30% discount, when you install solar panels on the roofs of the electric cars, right? So this is an additional 30% discount if you install solar panels on the roofs of the electric cars. So in this way, they are trying to boost the green energy market. Now, the legislation would also provide millions to help protect and conserve forests, which have been increasingly ravaged in recent years by wildfires. So you've seen the incidents of the heat wave, heat dome being formed, and it resulted into the heat waves, and there have been wildfires. So therefore, millions of dollars would also be reserved for the protection and conservation of forests. In fact, the billions of dollars in tax credits would also go to some of the country's worst polluting industries to help their transition to greener methods. Getting my point? So billions of dollars in tax credits would also go to some of the country's worst polluting industries to help them transiting to greener methods. So an important article, Inflation Reduction Act. Now moving to the editorial section. Students, again, an editorial has appeared on PMLA, or Prevention of Money Laundering Act verdict of Supreme Court in Vijay Madanlal Chaudhary versus Union of India just a few days back. Now we know that PMLA, is an act to prevent money laundering, and money laundering is nothing but the conversion of illegitimate money into legitimate money, right? So all the proceeds, which a person gets from all the illegal sources like terrorism, like drug trafficking, uh, sale of arms and ammunition, or let's say prostitution rings, that illegal money, when it is being illegally pumped into the banking system to generate the legal money, this practice is called as money laundering, right? Now it harms the financial system, and in fact the executive has termed it as bad as terrorism. Now, recently, and the PMLA was in fact passed in the year 2002, and since then it has been amended from time to time. And the latest amendment was in the year 2019, right? Which actually, put twin conditions on bail for PMLA accused people, and it made actually, it actually, in fact, made the bail provision literally impossible. The first condition was that the person who is being accused under PMLA, in order to get bail, he has to prove in the court of law his innocence, by gathering some evidences, so on and so forth. Until unless he doesn't prove it in the court of law, he would not be given bail, right? So, on the other hand, we know that in the criminal jurisprudence, you always consider the accused as innocent till you arrive at any judgment. But this actually kills the very purpose of the criminal jurisprudence, and in fact, it makes the process only a punishment. Right. The second condition is that when you are serving your bail, you must you must assure that you will not uh, involve yourself into any illegal uh, activities, or you will not commit any offense, right? So, and these conditions have made the bail provisions literally impossible, right? Wherein the same Chief Justice of India, N.V. Ramana, earlier said that we are seeking for bail jurisprudence and not jail jurisprudence, right? But then recently in Vijay Madanlal Chaudhary versus Union of India, it seems that the Supreme Court has, upheld the amendment passed by the government, uh, by the by the government to PMLA, right? And in fact, the author says that the Supreme Court, must sometime in not in the distant future, should correct its error. Now, actually, there is something called as predicate offense, which is the prime offense leading to the PMLA. For example, theft, terrorism, they all are predicate offenses. So this other crime, which is a necessary precondition for an offense under PMLA, is described as a predicate offense, which we also discussed in our earlier class. And when the predicate offenses, are governed by in fact, they are governed by the regular criminal process. Now, the author is trying to question that why there is a major deviation from this procedure in the PMLA, right? And this actual differentiation violates Article 14, 20, and 21. Now, as far as the PMLA Amendment 2019 is concerned, there is a non-supply of the enforcement case information report to the arrested person, right? So that means one would be arrested without the arrest warrant. right? That means, so this is actually killing the personal liberty. There's a power to make any person state the truth on oath, even though it may amount to self-incrimination. Correct. So that is also goes against the fundamental right of Article 20. Even if, even if the public prosecutor or PP opposes the bail, then the court can grant anticipatory or regulatory bail only if the court has reason to believe that the accused is not guilty. Once a person is accused of committing the offense of money laundering, the burden of proving that proceeds of the crime are untainted property shall be on the accused, right? So the burden of proof is on the accused. The blanket, common, and non-graded punishment for anyone associated with the money laundering, right? So even if you are indirectly associated with the act of money laundering, then you would have to serve the punishment, right? So it strikes at the very core of what the Constitution envisages a fair legal process to determine the criminal culpability of a person, because you will be forced to self-incriminate. That means uh, citing evidences against yourself. The court even compared the intensity of money laundering with terrorism, while disagreeing with its earlier judgment, where the court had made a distinction between the two. Now, there's a fundamental error for multiple reasons, because the first, the legislative intent can be a beginning point of a constitutional analysis. That is, whether the state has legitimate purpose in making a law, right? However, when the Supreme Court is actually, certifying the legislative intent, then it actually, it defies of its position of being, the uh, the judicial referee or a neutral referee, right? So this is the article, and a very important one, which and the author believes that the Vijay Madanlal Chaudhary case has actually, killed the due process, and therefore it must be corrected sooner than later. Moving to the next news article from the editorial section. It talks about the Supreme Court recently, putting unmarried women on an equal footing in availing abortion services. Now, we know that there is an act in the year 1971 called as the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971, and it actually prohibited unmarried women who between 20 weeks to 24 weeks pregnant, to terminate the pregnancy. Are you getting my point? So actually, the MTPA, or Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971, prohibited the unmarried women from the provisions of abortions between 20 weeks and 24 weeks pregnancy, right? But it allowed for the same time period, gestation period, for the married women, right? But now it has been changed, and Supreme Court has made this provision available to the unmarried women also, right? And it said that there is that every woman have the right to bodily dignity and integrity, and earlier the apex court in its wisdom facilitated the abortion beyond 20 weeks of a young unmarried woman whose partner parted ways after realizing she was pregnant, right? So in this sense, now the access to the medical abortion has become a level playing for both the married as well as unmarried women, right? So in this way, it is a forward-looking interpretation of the law, and in fact, in the recent guidelines by the central government, the rules, they have mentioned the word partner, in the MTPA, and not husband. So in this way, they have kind of reformed the process, right? In fact, even in the Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court of America has overturned Roe versus Wade, because the Roe versus Wade uh, came in the year 1973. The judgment, it was a landmark decision where American Supreme Court, or the SCOTUS, conferred the right to have an abortion, right? So the Supreme Court conferred the right to have an abortion in Roe versus Wade, but this was being overturned recently, a few days back in June, a few months back, June 24, 2022. The SCOTUS, or the US Supreme Court, overturned Roe versus Wade, the landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision that affirmed the constitutional right to abortion, right? So therefore, from now onwards, the abortion is not a constitutional right in America. right? So in this sense, at a time when American Supreme Court's recent ruling overturning Roe versus Wade has drawn that nation back several decades on the abortion question, India's apex court move stands out in sharp contrast, and it is in fact very progressive and forward-looking interpretation. And in fact, it is an example of court's willingness to be modern and progressive. It fulfills the spirit of Article 14, that is right to equality or equality before law and equal protection of laws. So therefore, the law should not cherry pick the beneficiaries. That means some a law applies to the women, married women, but not the unmarried women, right? Because every woman has autonomy on their own body, right? So an important one. I hope it is clear. Now the next editorial from the Hindu, the fight for fiscal autonomy. Now recently we know that the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, in fact, pointed that the states are not doing much to increase the GST revenues, and they should do more, to actually contribute to the GST. Now, the author is trying to say that the finance minister, has ignored the fact that the central government has reduced the fiscal autonomy of the states, giving them very little leeway, if at all, to do much, right? There is a less fiscal space being given to the states. Now, today, and in fact, in spite of that, the states of Tamil Nadu and Kerala have done pretty well. Right? Now, the share of indirect taxes, of the gross tax revenue in 2019 have increased by up to 50% compared to 43% in 2011, right? So therefore, the author is trying to explore that the government is increasing the indirect taxes, and in OECD countries, in comparison, the indirect taxes on average do not contribute to more than 33% of their tax revenue, right? So out of the total tax revenue, today the contribution from coming from the indirect taxes is up to 50%, right? Which is very high, because you must understand that indirect taxes are regressive in nature. What are indirect taxes? Those taxes where you don't pay directly to the government, you pay to some intermediary, and the intermediary in turn pays to the government. For example, you go to a restaurant and pays the GST, which is the indirect tax, and the restaurant keeper in turn pays back the GST to the government, right? So in this sense, if the share of the indirect taxes out of the total taxes is up to 50%, then it is a very big worry, because indirect taxes put burden, on equally on the rich as well as poor equally, right? For example, let's say there is a 10 rupees tax on biscuit, right? And assume that the packet of a biscuit is 100 rupees and the 10 rupees is tax. So you'll be paying 110 rupees, right? 10 rupees is GST. So even a poor would pay 110 rupees and a rich also would pay 110 rupees, right? So therefore, it is regressive in nature. It puts burden on the poor people, right? And thus rising inequality and lowering the growth, right? Now, according to the world, right? So I hope you're getting my point. In fact, while indirect taxes have increased, the direct taxes such as corporate tax have been reduced from 35% to 22%, right? So the direct taxes, the government is reducing the direct taxes. In fact, they are increasing the indirect taxes, leading to a loss of about 2 lakh crore to the exchequer. And this over-reliance on indirect taxes not only hinders growth by thwarting demand, but can also lead to high inflation and high inequality. So therefore, and the reason for high inflation in India lies in the extremely high CPI index for food, over 15% in the recent past, right? So we know that the CPI inflation, retail inflation should not cross 6%, but then for the food, it is crossing, 15%. In fact, even government, instead of making efforts to lower the food prices, have increased, the taxation via GST on the basic food items such as rice and milk. So today, you all know that the price of the rice and the milk have risen, by 2 or 3 rupees, and this is because the government has increased the GST over them, right? So instead of reducing or putting efforts to to lower the food prices, they are in fact increasing the GST. So this is actually the reason for high inflation, right? Now, as per the report, the World Inequality Report 2022, the top 1% of India's richest hold 22% of the total national income, as of 2021. So there is huge inequality, income inequality in India. And from the top rich 10% own 57% of the income, right? So in this sense, the report says that India is one of the most unequal countries in the world. Furthermore, the World Poverty Clock identifies India as home to second highest number of extremely poor people, right? So India is the home to the second highest number of extremely poor people. But at the same time, the Tamil Nadu, state of Tamil Nadu, because of the efficient public distribution system or PDS and the welfare schemes such as free bus travel for women, inflation or price rise has been negated to a greater extent. They are able to negate the inflation and price rise to a greater extent. Right? In fact, even in Kerala, the graduate enrollment ratio and the female participation in the labor force is very high in both these states. So therefore, they are able to, do well even in the times of when the central government is not, benevolent on the states. But the states requires the fiscal autonomy to, implement these programs. You can have many programs, but if this fiscal space is not given to the state, then there is no point, right? So they are saying that the author is saying that while because in spite of the fact that Tamil Nadu is a developed state, it gets just 30 paisa in return for every rupee it contributes to the union, right? So for every rupee that Tamil Nadu is contributing to the union, it's just getting 30 paisa in return. On the other hand, when you compare, and the fact that Tamil Nadu is a very developed state, right? But on the other hand, when you compare it with the states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they are getting 2 rupees to 3 rupees for every rupee contributed at the center, right? So therefore, there is this non-uniformity which is being explored by the author, and there's arbitrary increases on the cess and surcharges which are non-divisible with the states, and these have further reduced the individual states' fiscal resources, right? So the union government should urgently initiate a course correction on its taxation policy and fiscal autonomy. So beautiful article about fiscal autonomy and fiscal policy. I hope it is clear. So guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this session. Wish you all the best. See you in the next class. Good day. Goodbye. God bless.